What's good, YouTube? We're back again with another video. Yesterday, the ban list dropped, and there are a lot of new opportunities for some decks that were kind of bad in the face of a powerful tier 0 tier limit deck. But now that that's finally out of the way, we can start taking a look at some other decks that are very, very good, in my opinion, in the metagame, especially for upcoming YCS, like YCS Vegas, where everyone's going in blind. And one of the decks that really comes to mind that's been doing quite well in the OCG metagame is Labrynth. This is a relatively older trap-based deck that recently got a new card in the Photon Hypernova pack in the form of Big Welcome Labrynth, which is a very nice trap card that allows you to special summon a Labrynth monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard, then bounce one monster you control to the hand. And on top of that, it has a graveyard effect where you can banish it from the grave, then target one fiend monster you control. Or if you control a level 8 or higher fiend monster, which this deck happens to play plenty of, you can actually banish it from your graveyard to target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So, needless to say, this card kind of allows the deck to have a lot more glue. Previously, we only had the Welcome Labrynth, which was similar in that it allowed you to special summon a Labrynth monster from your deck. However, this allows you to special summon one from your hand, deck, or graveyard, including cards that we only play one of, like Lovely Labrynth of the Silver Castle, which we might happen to draw, or it happens to be in our grave. And then we can bring it back later on, so there's lots of recursion. And of course, having that broken graveyard effect is really relevant, on top of being 6 copies of a Artifact Sanctum for Labrynth cards from our deck, which is always good, right? So, I'm going to dive into this deck. I'll kind of explain what some of the cards do, because I'm pretty certain that most player base doesn't really know what these cards do. We haven't really seen them in the meta. So we're playing 2 Ariana the Labrynth Servant. This is a level 4 Stratos, essentially. If this is normal or special summon, you can add one Labrynth card from your deck to your hand, except itself. So you can add any Labrynth card from your deck to your hand, which is really, really nice. And then the other effect is if a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, you can draw one card, then you can apply this effect. Special summon one fiend monster from your hand, or set one spell or trap. And it's only once per turn. So what this means is if you have this, you can first of all Stratos for any card, and then on your opponent's turn, let's say we have a Compulse or something along that line where we can remove their monster from the field, well then we can draw a free card, so we get a free +1, and we can either set a spell or trap card, or we're able to special summon a fiend monster from our hand, which is very, very nice. Next, we're playing some furniture cards. I like to call these the furniture because the lore in these cards are apparently they're in some haunted mansion, like the hero visits a haunted mansion, and these guys are like the bad guys, I guess, or they haunt the mansion. And there happens to be a plethora of furniture. There's a chandelier, there's a stovetop, and there's a clock. And they all have similar effects, but they do something different. Labrynth's Chandraglier, it's a level 3 fiend. It has a quick effect. You can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard and discard one card. Quick effect is a cost. Set one Labrynth spell or trap from your hand or deck. So it's a quick effect, probably the fastest effect I've ever seen in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can essentially pitch it at any point in time in the game, including on turn 1, turn 0. You can pitch this with any card from your hand as a cost to set one spell or trap Labrynth from your hand or deck. And which means on your opponent's turn, you're able to set a Labrynth's trap, and on your turn, you're able to activate it as if it were a spell, because this trap needs to be set a turn prior before you can play it in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, right? So that's kind of cool. It accelerates that at the cost of discarding a card. But the other effect is a recursion effect. If a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. So after we use it, we can add it back continuously to our hand to use it again if we use something like a Compulse or any of the built-in trap effects to remove our monsters from the field, including our own monster, guys. It doesn't have to be your opponent's monster, okay? We can literally use Big Welcome Labrynth to special summon a Labrynth monster, bounce it back to our hand as a part of the effect, and then Chandelier will trigger in the graveyard, allowing us to add it back. Next is Labrynth Stovey Torby. This is the level 2 fiend with 2000 defense. It's kind of a shame that Elf is banned, because previously we could actually play Elf in this deck, but it's banned now, so we don't need to worry about that. It has a quick effect. You can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard and discard a card. Set one Labrynth spell or trap from your hand or deck. Okay, the same effect as a Chandelier. And then the other effect is if a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, while it's in the graveyard, you can special summon this card. So kind of similar to Chandragolier, but it special summons itself instead. And guys, these can be used from your hand or from your field to send itself to the graveyard and then discard a card. So it can be used on the field as well. So it's really, really nice. And this being able to special summon itself is also nice because it can be used as an extender play for your link summons. You can summon something like a Dark, a Donner, Dagger for Hire to pop something, a Nightmare Phoenix, or even a Muckracker from the Underworld, because these are all fiends. So it's really, really nice that they come back. And then the last one is a Labrynth Kuklok. This one's a little different. You still discard this card, but this effect, when it resolves for this turn, you can activate one normal trap card that was set this turn if you control a Labrynth monster. This is absolutely existential to the deck, because a lot of these cards allow us to search normal traps from our deck, including our powerful one-ofs like Eradicator, Epidemic Virus, Dogmatica Punishment, whatever comes to mind, even Dimensional Barrier, they're all searchable. And because when they're searchable, usually in this deck, you set them from your deck, we can discard Kuklok to immediately activate the card that we set on that same turn, which essentially means that you can search any trap and activate it immediately. And then the graveyard effect is if a card is sent from your hand to the graveyard to activate your normal trap card or your Labrynth card or effect, except Kuklok, you can add it to your hand or special summon it. So if this is in your graveyard, you can activate Stovey or Chandragolier from your hand, or if you happen to play other cards like Raigeki Break or Phoenix Wing Windblast, because there's a cost for activating traps, you can actually add this back to your hand or special summon it. So these furniture cards, kind of recursion, they come back. They're really easily recyclable. They're very, very nice for the deck, and I think they're really, really crucial for the deck. Guys, you cannot just play this deck with just traps and the Labrynth cards because they're not going to get you there. Like, the game is so fast. It's not like Eldritch where we can set 5 back row and pass. It's going to be really hard to win like that, but having the furniture allowing us to catch up to our opponent and play on our turn 1 with the trap cards as if they were spell cards, I think just puts another whole dimension on this deck and allows you to make plays. You can literally hold these until your opponent's end phase. A lot of decks aren't putting up Omni Negates in this format at this current time, so you can actually just use this, set a trap, and then they might have some trouble removing it. Like the the Cashier deck, they have trouble removing cards. They have to have 3 materials under a Rise Heart to get rid of something. So you could do this before they get the Rise Heart, and then they have to burn the materials on that trap that you set, so you can continue to play on your turn. Maybe you draw a skill drain, you can set that. They might not have enough materials to banish again, which they likely would not, and then you flip the skill drain, so you're starting to grind back in the game because of the fact that you were able to resolve one of these and set a card that your opponent was forced to banish because they were scared that you were going to play on your turn. Next is one of the main cards in this deck, Lady Labrynth of the Silver Castle. It's a level 8 fiend with 3,000 attack. This is as strong as a Blue Eyes White Dragon itself. And this is essentially a multi-faker for the deck. While you control a set card, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, also cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Wow, it's like a mini Dragoon on the field that you can get immediately, because the next part of the effect is the crazy part. It's a hard once per turn, but if a Labrynth card or effect or a normal trap card was activated this turn, except itself, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense mode. So if we use Labrynth Servant Ariana to add this Lady Labrynth of Silver Castle to our hand, we can immediately special summon it because we resolve the effect of a Labrynth card earlier this turn. And when this hits the board, the other effect is when a normal trap card is activated, quick effect, you can set one normal trap with a different name directly from your deck. So again, this is how we search our powerful one-ups like Eradicator. If we have Lady Labrynth of the Silver Castle on the field and we happen to activate any of our normal traps, so like any of our Labrynth traps, a Compulse, or any of these other traps, we can chain the quick effect to set a normal trap of our liking based on the scenario. If we're trying to play against Espia Branded, we can set a D-Barrier. If we're playing against a heavy spell deck like a Sky Striker, we can set Eradicator. We can set Dogmatica Punishment. You guys get my gist. This is really, really crazy, and it doesn't really put any restrictions on you either, and it could not be targeted or destroyed by card effects while you have face down, so it's really, really annoying. Very nice card. One thing to note is that this is a quick effect, so it's like the Paleozoics in the graveyard. It's like Havnus Tearlaments. You have to chain directly to your own trap effect. Your opponent can chain block you. So if you activate like a compulsory evacuation device with Lady Labrynth on the Silver Castle on the field, they can chain like an MST and then you would lose timing, so you cannot activate Lady Labrynth. You have to chain directly to the trap, guys. So bear that in mind. That's one way that they can exploit this deck. So bear in mind when you want to activate these traps, you want to directly chain to that. The other one is Lovely Labrynth of the Silver Castle. So instead of Lady Labrynth, this is Lovely Labrynth. It has 2,900 attack. It's a level 8 fiend as well. And this is more of like a 1-up because it doesn't special summon itself. What it does is your opponent cannot activate monster effects in response to the activation of your normal trap cards, so they cannot negate your normal traps. It's a hard once per turn, and then while it's on the field, you can target one normal trap in your graveyard, set it to your field, but it cannot be activated unless you control a fiend monster. So if you control this card and you have the trap, then yeah, you can use it. But if they get rid of your monsters, you cannot activate that unless you get a fiend on the field. And then if another monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, you can destroy one card in your opponent's hand at random or their field, non-targeting destruction. Okay, so if you pick their field, you can destroy any card on their field you choose. And then otherwise, they would discard a random card in their hand, or destroy it rather. So it's just a nice little boss monster effect that allows you to reset your normal trap cards as well. It's really nice to special summon off of Welcome Labyrinth when you can afford to, or off Big Welcome Labyrinth. It's not really a staple by any means, but I think it's good enough that you can play one of just as a toolbox boss monster that allows you to grind in the grind games, allows you to destroy cards, allows you to reset your normal traps, and then also prevents Omni Negates from stopping your traps. So it's just kind of a nice option to have. And then one Lord of the Heavily Prison. This is really nice card. Bear in mind it's rock, so be careful, guys, when you lock yourself into Fiend with things like I think Welcome Labyrinth doesn't even lock you into Fiends. Yeah, so this card actually just, you cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck or deck except Fiend monsters. So it only lock from deck, so you can still special summon it from hand. So never mind what I just said. But this card, you reveal it, you protect all your back rows so they cannot be popped, and then you can special summon it when you activate a trap, and when it's special summoned, you reveal and set one spell or trap directly from your deck, but banish it during the end phase of the next turn. What does that mean? Just like Lady Labyrinth, we can set any of our traps, like Eradicator, for example. Then if we have Coup Clock in our hand, or a way to search Coup Clock, aka a way to get Ariana onto the field, also known as either Welcome Labyrinth or Big Welcome Labyrinth, which are easily searchable, we can then add Coup Clock, we can resolve Lord of the Heavily Prison because we activated one of our set traps, then we can set a trap, and then we can activate the same trap that we set, so Eradicator or whatever. And it's really nice to have. Maybe this could be played in more copies. I just don't like drawing multiple copies of this card because it's essentially a -1 in your hand if you have 2 copies, right? And then we're also playing Absolute King Backjack. This is kind of an idea that I had that would work really well with the furniture cards because they're sending from your hand to the graveyard. And this is one of the cards that actually has a graveyard effect. So during your opponent's turn quick effect, you banish from your graveyard, you activate the top card of your deck. If it's a normal trap, you set it to your field and it can be activated that turn. And then the other effect, which is relevant, is if it's sent to the graveyard, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck, place them on top of your deck in inner order. So if we send this off with a furniture card, we get to set one of our Welcome Labyrinths. Then we look at the top 3 cards of our deck, see if there's a normal trap of our liking. We stack that one to the top. On our opponent's turn, we can banish Backjack and then Foolish or excavate that trap and then activate it on the same turn. So it essentially takes that furniture card and makes you get another +1 because your cost is now getting some sort of value back. So I thought that was kind of a cool option. You can also normal summon it and link it away into something like a Linkuriboh or a Relinquished Anima to trigger the effect as well. And because this deck doesn't really play a lot of normal summons, this is just a nice option to have. I thought it was a really cute card that you guys could test. Maybe it's not like the best card you sometimes whiff because we're not playing a lot of trap cards. This is not like the Eldritch deck where you're just like relying on traps, okay? We have a lot of combos in this deck. We can link monsters, we can summon a bunch of big dudes we can beat down, and then we can recycle our trap effects in the graveyard as well. So it's not just like relying strictly on heavy floodgates. As you can see, we're not even playing any floodgates, but you can play floodgates depending on what the metagame is. This is just like a glance going blind into the metagame. Labrynth. This is a field spell card, is one of that can also be searched by Ariana. Its effect is if you activate a set Welcome Labyrinth's normal trap, you can activate this additional effect to that card's effect at resolution. So it would be after that, destroy one card on the field. So if you activate Big Welcome Labyrinth or Welcome Labyrinth, you can special summon something, then you get to destroy a card on the field non-targeting. And then the other effect is if you activate a non-Labyrinth normal trap card, you can special summon one Fiend monster from your hand or graveyard. So if we activate Compulse and bounce something back, on the resolution, we can trigger the field spell Labrynth to special summon one Fiend monster from our hand or graveyard that's non-targeting, so it special summons it back. It's really, really nice thing to have, especially in the grind games. We can just activate this, we can search it off of Ariana, and then just go to the races like that. Pot of Extravagance, this is a no-brainer in a deck like this that doesn't really have draw power. This is just a free Pot of Greed. We don't really care about our extra deck. We're playing a trap deck, so this is really, really nice to have. Tempo of the Kings is a card that I'm sort of experimenting with. This is a card that was decently popular in certain builds in the OCG. It's a Merrick card that was originally in the anime with a broken effect, but they errated it a bit. think to make it a little more fair, you can activate one trap card the turn it was set, and then the rest of the effect is non-relevant. So the only one we care about is activating the trap card the turn it's set. So that means that you're essentially able to turn all your trap cards into a spell card. So the first trap card you activate, because you're able to activate it immediately when you set it. So on our turn, if we activate Temple of the Kings, we can immediately activate Welcome Labyrinth, special summon Ariana, and then search either Lady Labyrinth and start setting up our combos, or, you know, search furniture card or search another trap, and then it gives you a turn ahead, and it's a continuous spell card, so it also activates on your opponent's turn. So again, we talked about Ku Klok being able to activate traps that you search off of Lord of the Heavenly Prison or Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle. We can do the exact same thing when we have Temple of the Kings active. If we search any trap card off of Lady Labyrinth and set it like Eradicator, we can immediately activate it, because Temple of the King says you can activate one trap card the turn it was set, including on your opponent's turn, because it's a continuous spell card. So this is something that really shines, I think, with this card, being able to get dual value out of it. It's not just a neg1. We're using it on our turn, and then we're using it on our opponent's turn, and we're using it for the rest of the duel as long as it's face up on the field. So I think it's very good. It's surprisingly good. You would think it's a -1, but guys, this card is very powerful. We talked about Big Welcome Labyrinth already, as well as Welcome Labyrinth. Free Compulse is just generic removal. You could also try playing Get Out. I think Get Out is also a very good option against potentially Kashtira when they set up their board. You target 2 monsters your opponent controls that are special summoned from the extra deck, shuffle them into the deck. So it's a very nice card to have. Picture's not loading, but it's like a cute little, the girl cards. I can't remember what they were. But yeah, it's really nice. The waifu deck. Oh yeah, these guys. So yeah, it's really nice card that you could have as well. It's only once per turn though, so maybe you could replace one of the compulses with that. But I just like how compulse is generic cheap removal that triggers all of your effects, and is just, you can activate it whenever, so it's just nice to have. One destructive Daruma Karma Cannon. This is a newer card that came out in Darkwing Blast. Changes as many monsters on the field as possible to face down defense. Then if a player controls the face-up monster, they must send all face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. So it's kind of nice. It sucks that it flips up your own as well, so it's kind of like Book of Eclipse, but I just thought it was a really nice card to search against Kashtira, because it essentially forces them to pass their turn when they special summon like a Fenrir and you book it. There's basically like nothing else they can do unless they happen to open like Kashtira Birth plus another normal summon. There's nothing they can do, then they just pass. So I just think it's a nice option to have. Dimensional Barrier, another searchable option that's really good against Kashtira as well. It stops XYZ summoning. It's very good against Despia. It's very good against Tearlaments if they're even alive. It's very good against Pendulums as well. So this is a card that you guys can definitely keep on your radar and searchable. We're citing 2 more copies as well for fusion decks, which I think will be popular. Dogmatica Punishment, same sort of deal. It's just generic cheap removal. We can send an Entist to destroy something, or send a Cyframe Lord Omega to shuffle something back on the following turn. Eradicator, we already talked about eradicating spells and traps. It's very good. We also have Deck Dev in the side deck, so same sort of deal. If someone's playing sprites, we can just get rid of all their sprite monsters. Searchable. Forbidden Apocrypha. This is another one that I really like. It works against fusions or XYZs or synchros. Declare 1 monster card type. If 2 or more monsters of the declared type are on the field, make each player send all monsters of that type from their field to the graveyard. So if we're playing against Kashtira, we can set this, use it on their Shangri-La or Mindhacker and the A-Rise Heart, and they're forced to send them to the graveyard. So it's very nice. 3 Skill Drain. I just think Skill Drain is just so good against every deck right now, so we're just main decking it. It's also a very good option for going second. If we're setting a bunch of back row, we can just respond to their Omni Negate or any effects that they have, and then just negate it and take over the game. Terrors of the Overroot is a nice card. It's hard once per turn. Target 1 card your opponent controls and 1 card in the graveyard. Just send that card to the field, to the graveyard, and then if you do, set the other card from the graveyard that you targeted to your opponent's field. So it's just cheap removal. If your opponent has any card that we have trouble removing, we can just remove that and trade it for a card of our choice from their graveyard that we can easily deal with at a later point in time. So it's really nice option as a 1-up that's searchable. And then through Welcome Labyrinth, as we talked about before. Side deck. We're side decking Keldo and Medora. These cards work very well with the furniture cards because you discard them at the cost, and then on the same chain, because they're quick effects, you can immediately use those effects. So if your opponent's playing like Tearlaments or a graveyard-based deck, you can discard Keldo and a furniture card, set a trap, and then in response to that, you can banish it to shuffle back 3 cards in the graveyard because it's on the same chain. So very nice. It's unfortunate they got limited, but they are very effective. That I think having access to 2 coffees is still good enough to play against graveyard-based strategies. Lava Golem, again, we don't really use our normal summons, so this is really nice against decks like Kashtira or against decks that put up a bunch of boards, so we can just get rid of them. Ultimate Slayer, I kind of want to test this out. This is really nice going against some fusion decks, like getting rid of Mirror Jade. We can just send an Entis and then pop their face down or bait their branded in red. So they can't use like Guardian Chimera to start popping our cards when we set them, right? In the end phase, that would be really, really unfortunate. So we just want to bait things out. And then Slayer's like 2 for 1. So I think it's good enough to try out at least. Anti-spell is really good against spell decks, decks like Runic, against decks like the Despia deck. If they happen to play a lot of spells, I think it's just good enough that it gives you an extra layer. It gives you another turn, and then you can just take over the game. Because if this deck is around for at least one turn, you're going to be able to set the trap of your choosing. We can set an Eradicator, and then we can start blowing up their spells and just taking over the game from there. Deck dev, same kind of thing as Eradicator, and then 2 more copies of Barrier, because I think Despia Branded will be quite popular. And then Heavy Storm Duster just for back row decks, or for decks that happen to be, maybe like the Mirror Match, you know, or for Eldritch. This is just good. It's searchable. We can just pop 2 cards and then start, you know, controlling game. Remember, we can set the traps again with Lovely Labyrinth. So just having 1 copy of any trap that's searchable, we can just keep resetting it and reusing it to take over the game. Side deck, we are playing Extravagance, so we have to max out on a lot of cards. And Elder Entity Antis, Cyframe Omega, Dingirsu, just as an option because these big fiends are level 8s. Zeus and Beguska, just nice to have. Dark, Dagger for Fire as a generic removal, Nightmare Phoenix. We do sometimes lock ourselves into fiends with Big Welcome, or Welcome Labyrinth rather, so just keep that in mind. If there are any good fiend links, just definitely include them in here. Link Rebo and Relinquished for the Absolute King backcheck, and then 2 copies of Muckracker. This is a card that is a generic link 2 that allows you to discard 1 card and then target a fiend monster in your graveyard, special summon it. It locks you into fiends, but if we can special summon back our Lady Labyrinth or Lovely Labyrinth just off any 2 monsters, that's pretty good, especially when we have like Labyrinth, Stovies, Torby being able to come back, and then normal summon like an Ariana or a backjack, and then just making the Muckracker, discarding a card, and then starting to turn on our plays and tap into our engine. So that's about it for the deck. This is a really long video, but I'll show you guys a quick couple of combos. So this is a generic hand that we happen to draw. We're just going to go ahead and activate Extravagance just to draw 2 here. Really good opening hand. Like, it's a beautiful going first hand. We're going to reveal the Heavenly Prison. And then on their draw phase, we can actually activate Welcome Labyrinth. We're special summoning out the Ariana. And then Ariana's effect is going to allow us to activate something to add a card from our deck to the hand. We're going to chain the effect of Lord of the Heavenly Prison to set the Eradicator. So now this Eradicator has been set. Welcome Labyrinth does lock us into fiend monsters from the deck or the extra deck, but it doesn't lock us from hand, so that's why we can special summon Lord of the Heavenly Prison. We're going to add Coup Clock. So as we mentioned before, we're going to discard the Coup Clock. This is all in the draw phase. Now, Coup Clock allows us to activate a trap that was set this turn, which includes the Eradicator. We set off the Lord, and then we tribute the Lord. So off 1 Lord, we essentially are going to nuke the entirety of spells or traps and then win the game from there. So that's a really, really nice interaction with the Coup Clock that we have here. And then we have a lot of recursion. We have all these traps set still. On our following turn, if we get rid of something with like the Dogmatica Punishment, we can reset the Welcome Labyrinth from the graveyard because it has the effect if a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect while it's in the graveyard, except they're on the turn sent there, you can reset this card. So really, really cool. Another replay I'll show you guys here as well. Just going to reset this replay actually, because I think it already expired. But this is another kind of replay that we could do. Same sort of vein. We're going to activate the same vein of searching traps here. We're going to activate Extravagance, just draw 2 cards. I love how I always draw that. And then from here, you can see we have the Story. So we're going to discard the Stovetop as well as the Big Welcome Labyrinth, set Welcome Labyrinth, and then Big Welcome Labyrinth is live on our opponent's turn as a protective measure because we can actually special summon the Lady Labyrinth of the castle. So Labyrinth Lady is special summoned. And then from there, we can actually set our traps. And because we control a level 8 or higher fiend monster, this Big Welcome Labyrinth allows us to banish it from the graveyard to bounce back any card our opponent has during their turn. And then on their turn, we can actually do something really cool. Activate Welcome Labyrinth. If they have no response to Chain Block, we can chain the effect of Lady Labyrinth to set the Eradicator like we did before with Lord. And then Welcome Labyrinth will resolve special summoning Ariana. We can add the Coup Clock, and then Coup Clock can be discarded, so we can activate the Coup Clock. And then we can use the Eradicator immediately to tribute the Lady Labyrinth to nuke their spells or traps. So it's really, really nice things that you can do. If we had something like Temple of the Kings, we could do that instead of the Labyrinth Coup Clock. And then Ariana could either search another copy of Lady Labyrinth or follow-up cards. You know, just having like 3k bodies on the board that have 29 defense that cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects while you have set cards on the field is very, very nice. It's hard for a lot of decks to deal with that, especially when you have back row. So this deck has a lot of cool plays like that. When you're activating cards like Big Welcome Labyrinth, you can also recycle your Arianas. You can shuffle them, you can return them in your hand, normal summon again on your follow-up, and then, start to cycle through more of your cards. Stovey will also come back when Big Welcome Labyrinth bounces this back to our hand, so it special summons itself. We can use that to overlay into one of our XYZs, one of our Link 2s that we talked about previously, something like a Muckracker, special summon back to Lady Labyrinth in attack mode, and then we can continue to recycle the effect over and over. So these are just some of the quick plays that I'm showing you guys from a glance. There are a lot of more intricate plays. You can kind of do a lot of cycling with this deck. It's not really your traditional trap deck where you're just flipping floodgates and just trying to play. There are a lot of cool little niche tricky plays that you can do with this. A lot of hidden effects in the graveyard, a lot of hidden effects on the board, and that you can search and go into. So that's what I had for the deck. If you guys have any tips for me, let me know, because I really, really like this deck. I think it's a good contender for YCS Vegas if people are not prepared for back row decks, and being able to search Eradicator or like any virus is very, very nice. But if you guys like this video, leave a comment, subscribe below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.